father, his teenage daughter, and a murder that would destroy everything he thought he knew. But the killer wasn't a stranger. The killer wasn't some monster from outside their perfect suburban life. The killer was sitting across from him at the dinner table every single night. And when he finally discovered the truth, it was already far too late.
David Morrison thought he knew his daughter. 16 years of bedtime stories, soccer games, parent-teacher conferences, family vacations. Emma was his pride and joy honor roll student. Volunteer at the animal shelter, the kind of kid who baked cookies for elderly neighbors. She had his eyes, her mother's smile, and a future so bright it seemed to illuminate their entire home. But David didn't know Emma at all. The first body was found on a Tuesday morning in late September. A classmate, 17-year-old Jake Peterson, discovered in the abandoned industrial park on the edge of town. The news spread through their suburban community like poison in the bloodstream. Vigils were held. Counselors arrived at the high school. Parents held their children tighter and installed new locks on their doors. David comforted Emma as she cried over the loss of her friend. He watched her sign the memorial poster at school. He saw her genuine tears at the candlelight vigil. How could he have known those tears weren't grief, but something else entirely? Something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The police investigation moved slowly at first. Jake had been troubled, according to some accounts. Maybe drugs were involved. Maybe he'd gotten mixed up with the wrong people. The detectives asked routine questions at the school. They interviewed Jake's friends, reviewed his social media, traced his last known movements. Emma was questioned like dozens of other students. She was helpful, cooperative, appropriately sad. Nothing stood out. Nothing suggested she was anything other than another grieving classmate. But Detective Sarah Chen had spent 20 years reading people, and something about Emma Morrison bothered her. Nothing concrete. Nothing she could articulate in a report. Just an instinct that the grief didn't quite reach the eyes. That the helpful answers came a fraction of a second too quickly, as if rehearsed. But instincts aren't evidence. So she filed it away and moved on to more promising leads. The second body appeared 3 weeks later. Another classmate, 15-year-old Melissa Chang, found in her family's garage, staged to look like suicide. But the forensic evidence told a different story. The angle was wrong. The ligature marks didn't match. This wasn't suicide. This was murder, disguised as suicide. And suddenly, the community wasn't just scared, they were terrified. 2 teenagers dead in 3 weeks. Same school. Same social circles. The media descended. National news picked up the story. Suburban town gripped by fear, the headlines screamed. Teen serial killer stalking high school. The cable news speculated. Parents organized patrols. Students were forbidden from going anywhere alone. The town transformed from peaceful suburb into paranoid fortress. David installed security cameras around their house. He drove Emma to and from school, personally. He insisted she text him every hour. He was protecting his daughter from the monster out there. The monster, he believed, was some external threat. Some predator hunting teenagers. He never imagined the monster was already inside his home. Sleeping in the bedroom down the hall, Emma seemed to handle the fear better than her classmates. While other students were breaking down, having panic attacks, refusing to go to school, Emma remained almost preternaturally calm. "We can't let fear control us," she told her father. "That's what the killer wants." David was proud of her strength, her resilience, her maturity in the face of tragedy. He was proud of a psychopath's performance. The break in the case came from an unexpected source. Security footage from a convenience store near the industrial park. Footage that had been overlooked in the initial investigation. Footage that showed a figure in a distinctive jacket walking toward the industrial park the night Jake died. The jacket was unique, custom designed by a local artist. Limited production, only 30 made. and the police had a list of everyone who purchased one. Emma Morrison's name was on that list. Detective Chen appeared at their door on a Thursday evening. David answered, expecting routine follow-up questions. Instead, Chen asked if she could speak with Emma privately in the kitchen, while a uniformed officer stood by the front door, no longer protective but preventing escape. David's first instinct was defensive. His daughter was being targeted because of a jacket, because she happened to own the same type worn by someone near a crime scene. This was harassment. This was lazy police work looking for easy answers. He insisted on being present during questioning. He almost called a lawyer. He should have called a lawyer. In the kitchen, under the same lights where they'd shared thousands of family meals, Detective Chen laid out the evidence. The jacket near the first crime scene, but that wasn't all. There was phone data showing Emma's cell near both locations during the estimated times of death. There were deleted text messages recovered from Jake's phone messages, showing Emma had arranged to meet him the night he died. There were fibers. There were witnesses who'd seen Emma near Melissa's house the day she died. And there were the searches. Google searches from Emma's laptop. How to stage a suicide. Do police check browser history? How long does DNA last on clothing? How to delete digital footprints permanently? David felt the room tilt. This wasn't real. This was a mistake. Some horrible misunderstanding. His Emma, his baby girl who still kept stuffed animals on her bed, who wanted to be a veterinarian, who volunteered at animal shelters and baked cookies for neighbors. We need to search Emma's room, Detective Chen said quietly. We have a warrant. The search took 3 hours. David stood in the hallway, paralyzed, as officers methodically dismantled his daughter's room. Every drawer opened, every box examined, every inch of her private space violated in the name of investigation. Emma sat on the living room couch, eerily calm, saying nothing, her face an unreadable mask. They found the trophies in a locked box hidden in the back of Emma's closet. Jake's watch, Melissa's bracelet, photographs of both victims that Emma had taken without their knowledge, and a journal. Pages and pages of handwritten entries detailing fantasies about death, about control, about power over life. Detailed plans for the murders, sketches of the crime scenes, reflections afterward about how she felt. It's like conducting an experiment. One entry read, watching the life drain from their eyes, understanding that I have the power to end it whenever I choose. They never see it coming. They trust me right until the moment everything changes. In that moment, that precise instant when they realize what's happening, that's when I feel most alive. David collapsed. Not dramatically, not like in movies. Just ... folded in on himself, sitting on the hallway floor outside his daughter's room, unable to process what was happening, unable to reconcile the child he'd raised with the monster those written words described. Emma was arrested that night, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The preliminary hearing revealed additional evidence. Emma had researched both victims extensively. She'd cultivated friendships with them specifically as cover. She'd planned every detail of both murders weeks in advance. This wasn't impulsive violence or rage or accident. This was calculated, premeditated killing by someone who enjoyed it. The psychological evaluations painted a disturbing picture. Emma displayed classic markers of psychopathy: lack of empathy, superficial charm, manipulative behavior, need for stimulation, complete absence of remorse. The psychologist testified that Emma likely had been this way her entire life. Her brain simply didn't process empathy or moral consequences the way normal people did. Every loving gesture she'd ever shown her father, every tear she'd ever cried, every moment of apparent emotional connection, all of it was performance, learned behavior, mimicry of human emotion without any actual feeling behind it. Did I miss something? David asked Detective Chen during one of their many conversations after the arrest. Was there a sign? Something I should have seen? Chen's answer was both compassionate and brutal. Sometimes there are no signs. Some people are just born broken in ways we can't see. You gave her everything a parent should give: love, structure, opportunities, guidance. But if the capacity for connection isn't there, if the moral circuitry is fundamentally damaged, no amount of good parenting can fix it. The trial became a media sensation. Cameras outside the courthouse every day, talking heads debating nature versus nurture. Emma's face on magazine covers with headlines like "The Girl Next Door Who Became a Killer and Evil in Suburbia," when your child is a monster. David attended every day of the trial. He sat in the gallery watching his daughter, who looked so small and young in her courtroom clothes, as prosecutors presented evidence of her calculated cruelty. He listened to forensic experts describe how she'd killed her victims. He saw photographs of the crime scenes, of the bodies, of the evidence his daughter had collected like souvenirs. Emma never showed emotion. She sat at the defense table taking notes, occasionally conferring with her attorneys, looking for all the world like a board student in a particularly tedious class. When the guilty verdict was read, she didn't react at all, just nodded slightly, as if confirming something she'd already known would happen. The sentencing hearing was David's opportunity to make a victim impact statement. He'd written and rewritten it dozens of times. What do you say about your child who turns out to be a killer? How do you express the grief of losing your daughter, not to death, but to the realization that she was never who you thought she was? In the end, he spoke from the heart. No prepared statement, just raw truth. Emma is my daughter. I will always love her because that's what parents do, but I don't know her. I realize now, I never knew her. Every memory I have is contaminated by what I know now. Every hug, every "I love you," every moment I thought we were connecting. I'll never know if any of it was real, or if it was all just her learning how to imitate human behavior. The hardest part isn't that she killed those 2 kids. The hardest part is realizing my daughter was capable of killing them and feeling nothing, that she could look me in the eye and lie without effort, that I shared a home with someone I fundamentally cannot comprehend. He turned to look at Emma directly. I don't know what you are. I don't know if you're sick or evil or just made wrong somehow, but I know I failed Jake and Melissa by not seeing what you were. I failed their parents, and I failed you by not getting you help. Though I don't know if any help could have changed what you became. I'm sorry. To everyone, I'm so sorry. Emma was sentenced to life without possibility of parole. At 16 years old, she would spend the rest of her life in prison. As guards led her from the courtroom, she turned and looked at her father one last time, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. The sweet, innocent expression fell away, and something else looked out from behind her eyes. Something cold and predatory and completely inhuman. Then she smiled, not a warm smile, but something that made David's blood run cold, and she was gone. David still lives in the same house. He's thought about moving, but what would be the point? The horror isn't tied to the location. It's tied to his memories, which travel with him wherever he goes. Emma's room remains exactly as it was the night police searched it. He can't bring himself to change it. Can't pack up her things. Can't erase the physical evidence that she existed, even though emotionally she's already gone. He receives letters from Emma occasionally. She's chatty in them, describing prison life, asking about his health, making observations about current events. The letters sound like they could be from any daughter to any father. Normal, affectionate even. He never writes back. He doesn't know how to communicate with someone who's simultaneously his child and a complete stranger. Someone who might be mimicking affection, but feeling nothing. Sometimes, late at night, David pulls out old family videos. Emma as a toddler learning to walk. Emma's first day of kindergarten. Emma blowing out birthday candles. He watches himself being a father to a child who, if the psychologists are right, was already fundamentally different from other children, already missing something essential, already incapable of the love she appeared to show. And he asks himself the question that haunts every parent in his position. Could I have stopped this? If I'd paid more attention, gotten her help earlier, recognized something was wrong, could Jake and Melissa still be alive? Or was Emma always going to become what she became, regardless of intervention? The answer, according to experts, is unknowable. Some psychopaths can be managed with intensive therapy and supervision. Others cannot. Some never act on their impulses. Others are simply waiting for opportunity. Emma might have been stoppable, or she might have been inevitable. There's no way to know. The families of Jake and Melissa have never spoken to David. He understands why. In their position, he wouldn't want to speak to him either. His daughter murdered their children. No amount of "I didn't know" changes that fact. He carries their grief along with his own. Detective Chen still works cases, but she thinks about the Emma Morrison investigation constantly. "I almost missed it," she told a reporter in a later interview. "If we hadn't found that security footage, if Emma hadn't made that one mistake wearing that jacket, she might have kept killing." She had a list, we found out later. 8 more names. 8 more kids she'd chosen and was planning to kill over the next 2 years. She wasn't going to stop. Emma herself has never explained why. In interrogations after her arrest, she refused to answer that question. "Because I wanted to" was the closest she ever came to an explanation. No trauma in her childhood to point to. No abuse or neglect. No triggering event. Just a fundamental absence of whatever makes most people incapable of casually ending another person's life. The question that keeps David awake at night isn't why his daughter became a killer. The question is, was she always a killer who simply hadn't had opportunity yet? Was he raising a murderer from the moment she was born, changing her diapers and teaching her to read, while some essential piece of humanity was missing from her internal wiring? He'll never know. And perhaps that's the most horrifying part of all. Sound effect. Child's music box playing, slowly winding down to silence. There's a box in David's attic. He put it there after the trial. In it are all Emma's childhood belongings. Art projects from elementary school, report cards, certificates for good citizenship and academic achievement, photos of her smiling at family gatherings, evidence of a normal childhood that produced something utterly abnormal. He hasn't opened that box in years. Can't bring himself to look at those artifacts of innocence knowing what they led to. But he can't throw them away either, because some part of him, the part that's still a father, wants to believe there was something real in there. Some genuine moment of connection, some fragment of actual love, not just performance. He probably never will know the truth. And the not knowing is its own special kind of hell.